Welcome to Sonic Dorms, everybody. I'm your host, Max Davallo. My very first guest of 2025 is a special one. He is a producer, cinematographer, videographer, one of the best that I've seen out there in the industry over the last few years. His name is Rocco Guarino, and he is joining me in the Sonic Dorm for a conversation here today. Welcome, Rocco.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you something. The first time that I saw your name printed on something that got me intrigued in your work was a music video that you did for Velvet Revolver called The Last Fight. I
Yeah,
remember I saw your work on that, and I was completely captivated by the cinematography work on that. I love the shots that you took in that particular video. There's this almost like raw intensity to it, but it's also very clean, but without that like cheap gloss, as I like to call it.
right,
I
right.
don't know. And that I've watched both versions of the video, and
Cool.
that was really it. There's an alternative one where it's more of a band performance, and then there's a
Exactly.
standard one that was released through all the channels, which is more of a, it's got a little bit of a storyline trickled in.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that video was kind of a we went through six or seven cuts of it. Um the band and I were happy with my first cut, but the label just wanted they didn't want any narrative. They didn't want anything and they're just the band playing on stage. That was it. And we just all thought that was really boring. So there's actually a third cut that no one has seen or other than a few close friends. It's my director's cut. And the editor slipped that to me on the sly, so I can have a copy of it at least just for my own sanity. And that's got a lot more of that those little montage pieces. It's way more interesting to watch, I think.
That's really interesting to me. See, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was maybe the label that told you about adding in some of the narrative stuff, but no, that was all you really, right?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
The label just wanted to see the band rocking out. They just want to see Slash and hi-hat. That's all they cared about.
Oh. I would love to get more into that a little later, but before then, one of the biggest things I like to get into, especially with a first time guest, is the origin story, where it all
Mhm.
started for you, what inspired you initially. So, where does your story begin?
Well, I was born and raised upstate New York, Poughkeepsie area, Dutchess County. Um, and then I moved to Florida when I was like 16. Went to rehab. Um, got clean, sober when I was 16. Was sober for 20 years. And I have a funny story about that later. I'll tell you about when I stopped being sober, Scott and I. But yeah, and then yeah, I spent the 90s fronting a rock and roll band called Harvest in the Tampa Bay area. Um, and I made my first record when I was 98 in Florida, just a solo record. I just hired session guys. And then I formed a band and we did another record. So those records are actually about to come out. We never put them out. I'm not really a singer, but I had to sing because we didn't have anyone else, so I just did it. And anyway, finally putting them out this year. And then yeah, I moved to California in like 2002, I think it was. I turned 30, and I kind of had like a quarter life crisis. You know, I mean, hopefully 30 will be a quarter of my life, but I doubt it. Not to be 120 years old. So yeah, closer to midlife. Hopefully, I live more than 60 though. So I don't really know what to call it. But anyway, yeah. So I was living in Florida, and I had a publishing company with my mom, a book publishing, and I was building a recording studio in Clearwater, Florida. And I had the live-in girlfriend of 4 years and four dogs and a band. Had a lot going on, but there was something calling me. You know, there's always something. I've always felt like I'm called to do things. I don't know. So yeah, I turned 30. It hit me kind of hard, and that was it. I left the publishing company. I shut down the studio, quit the band, broke up with the girl, found homes for the dogs, and headed to California. I didn't know not one single person in California, in LA. Um, I had 900 bucks in my pocket, and I had an old beat up Saturn. And yeah, I ended up on the road visiting friends, driving from Florida to California. So stopped and saw my old bandmates outside of Athens, Georgia, and then I went and saw my family and did some shows in New York City. Then I stopped in Wichita, Kansas, and all along the way, I would just do like acoustic open mic or do little acoustic shows at coffee houses and sell my CDs and put out the tip jar, and then that's how I got money for gas or whatever for the next leg of the journey. So it was cool. It was a really fun time. I ended up in LA and I met um so in two what was it 98? So in 98 my drummer worked got he got transferred to LA from Florida and we kept in touch. And then when I moved out there, excuse me, there's so much to the story, but long story short, I was friends with a guy that was friends with the drummer of Scott Weiland's partners projects. So anyway, through a friend of a friend of a friend, I ended up working with Scott. Yeah, that was in like I think we met in like early 2003.
Wow, so this is definitely on the onset of him joining the band that became Velvet Revolver then.
Yeah, I was only working with him for a few months when that band started.
So
And
this
it
direct,
may have been oh, you know what? I
yeah.
rolled into LA September 31st, 2002. So it must have been late 2002 when I met Scott.
So just as fate would have it, you moving to California directly coincided with literally that shift in his life. Crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had just when I moved there, when I started working at his studio with his partner kind of took me under his wing and I let me take out the trash and wrap cables and make coffee for free. And then Scott got back from tour. He was on tour with STP when I was there. And then he got back and he was like, "Who's this guy?" And his partner was like, "Oh yeah, he's cool, he's cool." So I ended up sort of sober coaching for him because I was sober and he needed help and he was getting arrested and doing all kinds of shit. So I was the world's cheapest sober coach because they make like six grand, 8 grand a week. And I was doing it for I think 350 bucks a week was what they were paying me. So um but yeah, I would just pick him up in the morning at the rehab and then we would go to his apartment because him and Mary were broken up again at the time. So we'd hang out in his apartment, go to the gym, cook some food, go to the studio, and then I drop him off at 9 p.m. So that was like my first introduction to Scott. My first time with him was basically doing that, driving him around and stuff. He didn't drive. Well, he did, but he didn't want to.
Where now, so specifically at this point in your life, you're entering California, and what's your mindset? Are you coming in as I'm going to continue being a musician, or am I going to be a photographer? Are you still figuring that out at this point?
I moved to LA to be the next, acoustic rock guy, John Mayer or the band Tonic or Pearl Jam, you know, a lot of influences. But yeah, um, above anything else, I'm a songwriter. That's my main thing. Um, so I had a batch of songs, I had an album, um, and I headed out to LA to pursue that. And mind you, all of this time not being happy with my voice, my singing voice, and not really sure why I was doing it, but just like I said, something was calling me to do it, so I just did it. But anyway, I got here, and then, like I said, within a few months, I was working with Scott, and then that just turned into, Velvet Revolver, and then that turned into a long career, and I just kind of put my music on the back burner. So now I'm just getting around to putting it out there.
Gotcha. So what originally began as continuing a career in music slowly evolved into you being a photographer, really. So you kind of got sidetracked for a little bit, but I take it you didn't mind being sidetracked. right?
Yeah, no. So, like I said, when I started, I was just his like personal assistant, and then he asked me to go on tour with Velvet Revolver when they went on tour, and I was super stoked to do that, obviously. Um, and all the while, I would just take pictures with like a little cheap point and shoot camera. Sorry, I got a notification. I would take pictures with like a cheap point and shoot camera, or take little videos with a handy cam. And I've always felt like I might have an eye for that type of thing, but I never really tried it. So I just tried it, and Scott loved what I was doing, like the angles that I would shoot at with the lighting and the video and stuff. So I kept doing it. And the first thing they used was, the program when you go to a concert, you buy this program, and do they still do that?
You know what? I don't think so.
It was a
Well,
big ass book,
yeah, a
like,
big booklet with photos
yeah,
of the band, and it kind of gives you
yeah,
like an introduction into the
yeah,
tour and the record that they're touring again. It's
exactly.
beautiful. It's like a nice little
Yeah,
keepsake. Yeah.
yeah. So my first thing, so the label called and said, "Can you send us some behind the scenes photos?" So I sent them a CD of photos, and next thing you know, they sent me a copy of the program. It's like big centerfold. The centerfold of the program is all my backstage photos, and that was the first thing I ever had, like, out there in the world on a big level. And that was super cool. And then I got bit by the bug, man. I was started filming and photographing everything. And then the band hired me to put together like a little video blog. So I did like 4 or 5 of those, and they really loved them. And then they asked me to do a 30-minute documentary about going on tour in South America. And then I did another one about making the album. And then they kept coming back. And I was like, wow, this video thing's kind of cool. Literally, this was the first video, like, editing or shooting I had ever done was with Velvet Revolver. I was like, you know, so because I've always been a songwriter and producer, engineer, so the whole video thing was new to me. But and then they asked me to write a treatment for the music video for the last fight. So I wrote the treatment, and then I just figured they would have like a big name director direct it. Um, so they loved the treatment, and then they came back and they asked me if I would direct the video. I was like, I've never directed anything in my life, literally. Like, I don't even know what that means. And I had an assistant, Andy. He was a film school graduate, and he knew everything. So he basically taught me, a well wide shot and a mid shot and a close up and different lenses, um, and then they gave me $250,000 to shoot a 1 day music video on 16 millimeter film downtown LA. And that's kind of how I got my start.
Isn't that crazy how life is, though? I'm like listening to your story, I'm going, it's inspiring because it goes to show that if you feel that deep calling in your heart to go and do a shift, a complete radical shift in your life, but you don't know exactly why, but you do it
Yeah,
anyways, it's because it's like almost like a necessity.
yeah,
You never know where that's going to take you. And the fact that in that moment you decide to leave Florida and go to California, and the way you didn't think you were going to end up where you ended up, it just kind of happened. But
oh yeah,
it all
it was,
started with that necessity to just change everything.
yeah,
And I think that's something I definitely like to when I talk to people on here. I definitely want to bring that out, especially if you have an inspiring story like that, because I think a lot of people are. I know times are a little different now, but at the end of the day, I think that there's a purity there that should never go away. If you really want to do something in your life, do it. I mean, if it's
yeah,
something that feels honest. I don't think that's something that you should run away from.
yeah. I was in a book shortly after I moved to LA. I met a photographer, and he was putting together a book called Quitters. And it was basically about people that seemingly had everything that they wanted in life and then dropped it all to just go pursue some crazy dream. So we did a photo shoot, and he put, a page about my story, because that's sort of what I did. I was working at Tires Plus corporate, and doing cross-relational database reconciliation, and while I was building my studio in the evenings and playing shows with my band, I also did the publishing company with my mom. And so yeah, I had a lot going on, but yeah, it just wasn't cubicle life just wasn't my jam.
Yeah, well, hey, look at that. And I love the fact that you brought up Scott because what initially got me interested in wanting to reach out to you outside of all the incredible work you've done, it kind of came full circle for me. Was you're pretty frequent on and posting on social media these
Yeah,
days, and you had posted something. This is now the second time I've seen it. And if there's been more times than that, pardon me, but you wrote on your Instagram stories that you have, I believe it's over 5 hours of interview footage
yeah,
with Scott Weiland. You've got 12 years basically of his life archived from
yeah,
all the time that you spent working with him throughout the years. And Scott means a lot to me. He's one of my musical heroes, whether it be his poetry work, his singing, his songwriting. I find him to be quite overlooked and underrated at times for what
yeah.
he brought to the table as a songwriter.
Right.
There's something there that I think gets lost. I don't know why it does exactly. I try not to overthink it, but
Yeah,
I find it does. People like to particularly like gear towards certain aspect of his career. It's
right,
either core or purple, but beyond that,
right.
it's kind of like there's so much great
Yeah,
stuff. And to me, the way he progressed as an artist to me is so fascinating.
yeah,
Very much in that David Bowie,
yep,
constantly shifting. He was very much a chameleon.
yep,
Um, very, he's not exactly someone that was easy to pinpoint. And
yeah,
I think maybe that's one of the things that maybe makes it not as easy to, I don't know, go along for the ride with. He's not somebody that you can just be like, oh, he's that character. He's that kind of
right,
musician.
yeah,
So, point of the matter is, I appreciate you for bringing that up because I think you have a gold mine there. And
yeah,
not that my opinion really matters in that kind of way, but I I feel like there's a treasure trove there that could lead to a re-evaluation of who he was as not just a singer-songwriter, an artist, but as a human being. And
yeah.
how do you feel about that right now? And what's your take on you having all that footage and you, I don't want to say promoting, but you showcasing the fact that you have all that. Do
Yeah.
you have any ideas at the moment as far as like what you could do with something like that?
I mean, ideally, a documentary would be great, but I think they're already doing one. The folks that bought his image and likeness and catalog and all that, I think they're already doing a documentary. I don't know. I'm not really sure. So yeah, it looks like I may just put up little clips or something on the internet or just more than likely nothing will probably ever happen to it. So or happen with it, I should say. More than likely, nothing will ever happen with the footage. I don't have the rights to do a documentary or anything. So
Okay, so in that case, I mean, you worked closely with Scott. I mean, again, he's an artist I've always admired because of his raw talent and complex personality. But
yeah,
what did you take away from the experience of working with him, both, personally and professionally?
what did I take away? Oh man,
Mhm.
so many things. I mean, and we worked together for a long time. I think the one thing that I really admired about him was his like unflinching ability to just always demand what he wanted artistically. Like he would want something creatively, whether a certain photo shoot or something in the studio or video or an ad or whatever. Like he would have a vision for things, and the label or management or publicist, whatever, different people at various times would try to get him to do something differently. You know, and he would always stick to his guns. He was the artist; they were not. They might be able to advise him as I mean everything any input that an industry professional is going to give you is going to be based on money, right? But his motivation was not let's do what's going to make the most money. His motivation was let's do what's the coolest, you know, like let's do something interesting and unique. And that is what I really took from him was like stick to your guns. Don't do things for money, do things for creativity and always keep it about the art and fuck everybody else, you know.
Were there any aspects of Scott's artistry that you feel were, going back to what I said earlier, were misunderstood or underappreciated by the public that you think just went over people's heads, in your opinion, just based from your time working with him?
Yeah, I mean, just overall, not any specific aspect, just overall in general, I feel like when people talk about the big grunge bands of the day, a lot of time SDP doesn't get included. And, you know, he passed away. They didn't do anything, any kind of like Rolling Stone didn't do any kind of memorial or anything. And, they always do that for people. So, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, not really sure, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I wish I knew. Nobody really knows these things, man. It's just, it is what it is, you know, he was incredible, incredible talent, you know. And
Yeah.
I think eventually maybe the world will see that,
Well,
maybe it'll take more time,
I,
maybe.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but part of me doing all this and trying to build this up is because I want to put a spotlight on people that it bothers me greatly. I get kind of choked up talking about it because it does bother me greatly that some of these artists that to me gave so much of their heart and soul to people get neglected. Sure, they had their demons, but even when they were alive, they were neglected, I think, at times, or they were, they weren't being what was being spoken about was everything but the art, and even when he
Right.
was alive, it was like, well, let's talk about the tabloid stuff and the drama and all that. And I go, what about these great songs that he wrote or this and
Yeah.
that? I'm going, that I don't, people like to go for the cheap shots and
Yeah.
the sensationalism of it all.
Yeah.
And I just think it's wrong. And to me, like, I don't know. I try to focus on the positive at the end of the day. We're all human beings. We all
Yeah.
have our issues. But at the end of the day, these people are talented. And I think that
Yeah.
it's a shame that sometimes all that gets kind of pushed to the wayside. Um, so yeah, that's sorry, but
Yeah.
seriously, it does bother me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I spoke at his funeral, um, I said, he had so much pain, and because of that pain, he created art, and because of that art, it brought the whole world joy. So it's strange that like so many millions of people can feel better because he's feeling bad. It's really ironic and it sucks, but you know, it is what it is.
If
At least he had the outlet.
Yeah, I mean, is there a particular story, or if you don't mind sharing, or a memory from your time with Scott that you feel best encapsulates who he was as an artist and as a person?
Not as well as an artist. I don't know if I really have a specific memory. I remember driving him around in my beat up Saturn around LA and him falling asleep in my passenger seat or like, with a Gatorade in his lap or something. And then he would wake up and this one particular time he had a notepad and he was designing what his look is going to be for the Contraband album cycle because he was a lot like Bowie and then every album cycle he would reinvent a new look or a new character, not with names but just a new vibe. So and he was drawing on a piece of paper like the hat and the all this stuff and I was just like, man, that's fucking cool. And then sure enough, we would find things um and he would dress the way he envisioned it and then he would just the one time like he just walked out of the bathroom and was like, holy shit, like that's not the same guy that walked in. It's pretty wild the way he transformed himself. I mean, even physically, unfortunately, if you look at him at the beginning of his career, his even his bone structure is very different. But and then memory that I might have that would encapsulate who he was as a person would be Um, I've probably told the story before, but he had a house up in Washington State near where Duff had one because they were doing martial arts and Duff's since well both of theirs since they lived there and it's called Lake Chelan. So he bought a cabin up there and I went up there to help him, set it up and hang pictures and stuff. And the cabin came with two snowmobiles, and there was a snowmobile club that would go like 50 people, and they would have snowmobile trails. One of the old guys left his left all his money to the snowmobile club, so they had little trails to go up the mountain, and there was a cabin at the top where we all hung out. It was really cool. Um, so we're going back down the mountain, and he's like two snowmobiles in front of me, and it's really gnarly. Like this is a mountain with cliffs and stuff. And the trails are like made for snowmobiles. Like they're wider than a people trail, but they're not as wide as a car trail. So they're like snowmobile trails. And it's like official snowmobile club. Anyway, we're going around this corner and I see there's a cliff and I just see headlights go. And I'm like, oh my God. I was, my heart sank, and I was just thinking, oh yeah, I can see the headlines. Scott Weiland dies in a freak motorcycle accident or snowmobile accident. So I get up there and he's just sitting on the edge of the cliff and he's looking down and he goes, "Yep, I did it this time." And
Wow.
then it was pretty wild, man. And then the head of the snowmobile club went down there and somehow drove that thing up the mountain and landed it. It was all messed up, but it was drivable. So, but that was just like, we had a Scott and I had a long history of stealing or being on like small motorized vehicles for some reason. Like when we were making the music video for um what was it for? I don't remember what song it was. I think it was on the first album. There's a music video that Kevin Kerslake directed about the band and
Was
he's
it
like,
Fall to Pieces?
yeah, Fall to Pieces.
Yeah.
So we were in Santa Monica shooting that and we're hanging out in the trailer just waiting for Scott's turn to go up and when he's needed and they have they have golf carts, to get you around set or whatever. So Scott and I stole a golf cart and we were driving it around, and we got stuck in the sand on Santa Monica Beach, of course. And I was just thinking, it's very strange. I said, "Man, it'd be perfect if we just had like a big piece of plywood, to help us get out." And we looked over at the lamppost. And I swear you can't make this shit up. There was a fucking 4x8 sheet of plywood leaning up against the lamppost randomly. Like no, not a construction site or anything, just like a piece of plywood. So we got out, we went back to the set, and we got chastised you know, by the crew and everything because we disappeared. And then also, one time we were in New Zealand on tour. We had a day off, or it may not have been a day off. It may have been like before the show during the day. Because Scott was famous for just like doing random shit. We would do random shit. So we were like, all right, let's go water skiing. So yeah, the guy that owned the water ski shop let us take two brand new water skis out of off the showroom floor. He loaded them on his trailer and he took us out to where to go. And he said, "Don't go here. It's too shallow. You'll suck up sand through the whole machine. And don't go over here. There's like seaweed or whatever." So he dropped us off. He was like, "All right, I'll see you guys in like 4 hours or whatever." So Scott Scott was like, he weighed half of what I weighed. So he went off into this marsh area and he's like, "Come on, man, it's cool. Like, look, I'm fine." I'm like, "All right." So then I did it, and of course, I fucked up the water. The what is it called? The water ski. Yeah.
Mm.
So of course, I fucked up the water ski, and I sucked a bunch of sand up into the engine and whatever. But yeah, so we didn't have good luck with small motorized vehicles, but we had a lot of fun.
Sounds like you had a lot of cool little like, personable moments with Scott that were like that you got to see a side of him that I don't think a lot of people, unless you were in
Yeah.
like his inner circle, really got to witness. It
Yeah.
sounds to me like he was a guy that liked to have a good time. He sounds like he was somebody who was, he could be very joyful and
Yeah.
and whimsical, sounds like too, right?
Yeah, and then he could go to the complete polar opposite of the spectrum and get really, really dark. So, you know, it's tough, man. He struggled, and a lot of the mental illness that people go through is not any fault of their own. They just you get dealt the hand you get dealt, and I always said if I was in his shoes, I would have acted the same way,
Hmm.
you know. So, yeah, just compassion and empathy is all you can really do.
Yeah, just being there for them if they needed you and being that open ear. Sometimes people
Yeah,
just want someone to talk to,
yeah,
who isn't going to go behind their back, of course. You
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I appreciate you for sharing all that with me, of course. I think
Hmm.
that's the kind of stuff that I think people need to, take away was like, I try to focus on the positivity. So
Right.
that's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, you just opened up a little door in my head right here. I remembered something. I'm sure you've talked about this before too, but you did a video for a song that never got officially released by Scott. Pretty sure you know where I'm
Hmm.
going with this.
Yeah.
The song's called Happy, and
Yeah.
he collaborated with Pharrell on that one, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. It got leaked online a few years ago, and so
Oh, really?
I was able to hear it, and I love the track.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I think it could have been like, dare I say, a hit had it been released with the video,
Right.
which you directed, right?
Yeah. It was kind of yeah. So the story with that was, it was very strange. Um, my friend Vic was working with Pharrell, uh, assistant engineer, and I was assistant engineer for Scott, and we kind of came up together. And then he's got 2 Grammys now, fucker. But anyway, he we ended up they they ended up collaborating, Scott and Pharrell, through no help from me and Vic. It just randomly happened. It was very, very weird. So Vic ran the CD over to the studio in Burbank, and then Scott put vocals to it. We recorded it, and then he wanted to make a little music video out of it. So that was probably actually, yeah, that was like my first time doing video. We put like, it was very crude. I don't know if you've seen clips of it, but it's very crude.
I think I
It's
saw
it's like
balloons in the background. I saw a set photo with balloons coming down. Maybe I'm mistaken, but
no balloons. We had a mirror ball,
okay.
and that was when I introduced Scott to my friend Jeremy Brown, who was my friend at the time. We worked at Manny's Music on Sunset Boulevard, and he was worked in the guitar department, and we became friends. This is when I first moved to LA. And then Scott needed someone like a guitar player for the music video. I said, "Well, this guy look, he's got a cool look." So I invited him up, and Jeremy was in the music video. And then like a few years later, Scott was like, "Hey, that guy Jeremy, does he actually play good?" I was like, "Yeah, he's an incredible guitar player." So he ended up joining the band, and he wrote a lot of the music for um, the Wild Abouts
Hmm.
album. And then we did some of the Happy and Galoshes album in Chicago with Steve Albini, and Jeremy was there for all of that, and then he passed away shortly before Scott passed away. So yeah, but so yeah, that's how Jeremy ended up getting in the band. Um, and that music video, we never really finished it. I mean, it was just kind of like, it was very crude and amateurish, but I guess it would probably be funny to see it these days. I don't even know where it is.
Yeah, I think the song should get a proper release. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
if it was tied to any, legalities or anything that happened there with why that wasn't released, but
Well, Pharrell ended up revamping it and
okay.
he released a song called Happy. He
Hmm.
released that song, but without Scott's fault. It was he didn't use anything Scott did. So it's the same music, but it's him, Pharrell, singing on it, and he put that out, and it was a big hit for him.
It's a good song.
Yeah,
I think it would have been really cool to have that out back in 2000, what was it, 2006. I believe.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Scott experimented a lot. You know, that was a I don't know if you'd call it R&B or hip hop, but you know, kind of a track with Pharrell. And then he did a couple things with a EDM guy. He did, you know, he loved his country stuff. I mean, he was kind of all over the place. It was
yeah,
cool.
if you listen to the Happy and Galoshes record, I think that's like nice little like overview of a little bit of everything that he was
Yeah.
into because you got like The
Hmm.
Man I Didn't Know is like a country tinged kind of tune, and you
Yeah.
got like like Bowie-esque pop with Missing Cleveland.
Yeah.
You got the
Love that
country,
song.
you got the Bob
That's probably
Dylan
my
thing.
favorite song. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Missing Cleveland.
Yeah. Love that song, man.
Did you direct that video?
No, not that one. No. That one, I directed one called Modzilla on the Blasters album.
Yeah,
Did
which
Mud
is
I
like
think we
live footage.
yeah,
Yeah,
we shot it at the Troubadour
yeah.
in LA, and then and I did some other promo stuff too. I've done a lot of stuff with Scott over the years, videos and stuff.
Would you say Scott is the like the primary artist that you worked with throughout for like a big chunk of your career, really, as a
Um,
photographer, videographer?
in the early part of my career, yeah,
Yeah.
and then you know, as the years went by, you know, I started working with more people. You know, I ended up working with Juliette Lewis and Jane Lynch and Elton John, and I mean, man, I've worked with just filming like um, everyone from Joe. Who's the singer from Def Leppard? Joe Elliott.
Joe Elliott, yeah.
Yeah, Joe Elliott and Sebastian Bach and Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple, and yeah, it's a long list of video stuff. I've actually worked with more like famous people doing video work than I have doing sound or you know music.
Awesome. Now, where are you now? Do you work with younger talent at all, or are you mostly
Hmm.
working with seasoned veterans in the music world?
Well, a lot of times the seasoned veterans are the unknown guys, you know. So I moved to Nashville in January 23 from LA, and yeah, I do select music projects that are I think are exceptional, and I have my label Starlight Records that is just sort of a vanity label right now. I think I've got 11 artists signed. The next new one I got coming out is called PJ Ferguson and the Tennessee Strange, and it's really good music, really good rock and roll, great songwriter, great singer, and his band is amazing. They play down on Broadway in Nashville every night. And seasoned guys, but they're somehow all still in their 20s, just incredible musicians. So that one was really fun to do. And yeah, just been focusing on my own music and my band Harvest and my label Starlight Records. Those are my main focuses right now, you know. And I'm working with you know talented people.
Right on. I mean, I'm more than happy. I'm going to be looking into some of those artists. I'm always looking out for new talent who maybe
Hmm.
isn't getting the recognition that they deserve. I think, not to get on my soapbox again, but I feel like we need more people out there like doing this kind of thing,
Hmm.
talking about the music because terrestrial radio isn't going to do it.
Yeah,
So it's really, I know it's not much, but it's something. We need more people,
yeah,
even if you have 20 followers, talk about the music that you love, promote the
yeah,
music that you're listening to, whether that
yeah,
be underground, overground, doesn't matter, but
yeah,
do
yeah,
it because I
yeah,
think like we're the current set of radio personalities is in the podcasting community and
yeah,
people that are so I think that it's kind of overlooked. I see a lot of people in like the movie channels doing that kind of thing, like movie criticism and all that, but not a lot for music. And I think we need more people out there rooting for their bands and talking about them, promoting them, and whatever.
yeah, yeah. You know, one idea that I had that I always thought would be really cool was um, there used to be a show. Oh man, I can't remember what it's called, but it was on a stage with a live audience, and it was at a I think it was at an acting school in New York City, I can't remember what it's called. The guy was like, he had like bad complexion. He was like a bigger guy, and he would sit down with the actors and just interview them on a stage with all the film students. And he did that for many, many years. But it was really cool because it was really a way. Oh, it was called Inside the Actor Studio.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it was called, Inside the Actor Studio. And it was great because if you were interested in acting or in any way or interested in that person, it was just like a real sit down thing. It was really cool. So I always thought it would be cool to do that with musicians, do like extended interviews, and just have a series of interviews with great musicians. That would
Yeah,
be cool.
and get to the heart of it, like don't
Yeah,
not these like
yeah,
surface-based questions like so I don't
yeah,
know. That's what
yeah,
I'm
and get
that's what I'm
and
trying
get
to do
more.
here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Um, but I appreciate you for being here today. It,
yeah.
it it means a lot to me, and to me, you're one of the, as I like to call, the real deals out there. I love your work, and
Thanks,
think
man.
you've got a lot of great stuff, and I can tell there's a sincerity in what you're doing. It's always been there, and
Yeah,
I think people need to check out your work more. So.
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, one last question, which
Yeah.
kind of ties back to the beginning of today's conversation, which is if you could go back and give advice to yourself when you were first starting out, what would it be?
Focus on your strengths. Yeah. If you've got something that you're good at, that's what you need to develop more. I wouldn't, I don't, I mean, it's good to have a lot of skills, I guess, and be sort of well-rounded, but I think if you have a skill or talent or something that you sort of have an inclination towards or an aptitude for, I would focus on that, developing that. And if there's something that you're not so great at, obviously, I wouldn't focus on that. I mean, that's just my opinion. And this is coming from a person. It's funny that I'm like, I do video, I do music, and so I do a lot of different things. But yeah, when I was coming up earlier in my career, I it took me a while to realize that I need to focus on my strengths and just put everything else aside. Um, because I really wanted to get better at things I wasn't great at. And it was like, no, for me, what worked in my career was focusing on my strengths. You know,
Right on. All right. Well, I appreciate that. And again, inspiring. Your story is inspiring, as I mentioned earlier. I think it shows a lot of people that, do what feels right to you and
yeah,
be instinctual. If
yeah,
you're feeling a pull towards something that could lead you somewhere else, just do it. You never know where
do
it's
it,
going to
man.
lead to.
You have to do it. It's good for your soul. And just be yourself. I know it's cliche or whatever, but like there's only one of you, and like you could fall in line with the rest of society or wherever music is or video is these days and try to do what's popular. But if you can figure out a way to have your own voice as a creative, regardless of what field you're in, um, just do something, just do you. I mean, that's that's all you can do, and people will either like it or not, but at least you can sleep at night.
Absolutely. Well, Rocco, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for joining me in the Sonic Dorm today. It's been
Awesome.
awesome, seriously. And where can people find your work if they want to check out what you do?
Rockomusic.com. Yeah. I mean, I'm also on Instagram. It's Rocco Music.
Right on. Well, hey, all the best. I'm crossing my fingers. I know that, other people are working on stuff, but I would love to see you maybe trickle out a little bit of what you got in the archives,
All
if you know what I mean.
right.
Because
Yeah, yeah. We'll see.
there's, yeah, because I think people need to see that stuff. I think it's
Yeah,
important. So if
yeah.
there's any way you can do it without getting in trouble.
We'll see what happens.
All right, Rocco. Well, all the best. Keep in contact. I'd be more than happy to have you back on someday.
All
And
right.
all the best as always. All right.
Very cool. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Take care. Until
All
next
right. You
time.
too, man. All right.